Welcome. It's another rendition, Knicks Talk. Mitch, I am. Make sure to click subscribe, like the video if you can. Give it some interaction. If you don't like the video, like this content sucks, give it a thumbs down, whatever, I'll take it. Click subscribe if you can. Couple of topics today as we bounce on and keep rolling through the Knicks offseason. Tom Thibodeau getting a 3-year extension that will keep him with the Knicks through the 2027-28 season. And one lingering topic through the offseason has been one Julius Randle, his fit with the Knicks, what the plan is going forward, given his contract situation, so on and so forth. So those are the two heavy topic points today. Maybe we'll dive into a little more, but let's start with number 30. Let's start with Julius Randle's season was cut short after a shoulder injury that he sustained in January against the Miami Heat. Tried coming back at the tail end of the regular season to get ready for the postseason for the Knicks. Never came to fruition, and his season was shut down. When he's been on the court for the Knicks, in large part, you're talking about an all-star player, a guy who's been an all-pro in the NBA for the Knicks. But now there's new pieces coming into the mix. He was there for the beginning of the OG Anunoby transition when OG and Precious Achiuwa were traded from Toronto. Of course, Malachi Flynn was in that trade as well, but later moved again. OG being the main piece. Julius was there when Anunoby was getting broken in with the Knicks and starting to kind of fit as a puzzle piece, a big puzzle piece for the Knicks last year, and now, of course, moving forward. A lot of discussions on Knicks Twitter, in Knicks Twitter spaces, about the current roster and the fit with Julius Randle, to me, are only being brought up because of one thing. And that's what I want to preface with. I think this is only a subject for some people, myself included now, because Julius Randle is extension eligible. And there were reports earlier this summer that had stated neither the Knicks or Randle's camp had many, if any, discussions, dialogue pertaining to an extension for Julius Randle. Now, there can be a couple of reasons for that. The Knicks are still trying to figure things out. Now they have clarity with Jalen Brunson's extension and him taking a discount. They have OG back on the books. Now they got to figure out later on what to do with Mikal Bridges and his contract extension. There's just a lot of moving parts, and it's not saying the Knicks are prioritizing some or all of those names over Julius Randle. There's just, for the Knicks, Leon Rose and the rest of the Brain Trust, there's an order of operations that have to take place. But I know because he doesn't have the contract extension, and then we saw the reports that, hey, there hasn't even been much dialogue. A lot of people are wondering, like, what's going on with the Julius Randle situation? I'll also start by saying at this stage of the offseason, I would be surprised if Julius Randle was dealt. This is a front office that makes moves at a time when you least expect it. You know, if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Leon Rose and the rest of the Brain Trust make moves that come out of nowhere, have had no traction. Like the OG Anunoby trade, you know, there were whispers about like, oh, maybe Toronto decides to blow things up and part with a lot of these guys like Siakam, like OG Anunoby, and they ended up dealing both those guys. And, you know, it was like, oh, there were people saying, oh, the Knicks would be a great fit for OG, a 3-and-D guy, one of the best, you know, on-ball defenders in the league. He can fill it up from the corners too offensively as well. But it came out of nowhere. There were no like whispers like, oh, you know, there's been dialogue between Toronto and New York. Came out of nowhere. And the Mikal Bridges deal was the same thing. So I will say the Knicks, this regime has had a tendency to make moves, big moves, that come out of nowhere, where there's no lead up to it, and then you expect it. It's just snap of a finger. Oh my gosh, OG Anunoby's here. RJ quickly being sent out. Oh my gosh, Mikal Bridges is here. Bogey and picks being sent back to Brooklyn. So I get that angle of it. As it pertains to Randle in the fit, look at the molding of this current roster on the offensive side of the ball for the Knicks. This very much so appears to be a team, an offense, that's being constructed to let Jalen Brunson drive, do his thing, and dish when need be. You can say that for a lot of teams with their point guards, right? Like, oh yeah, of course, it's pick and roll, run the high pick and roll, drive, dish, facilitate. But a lot of people don't have the personnel to do it. and they'll just run it into the ground that way anyways. The Knicks are now being built, and it seems very clear to be a team. Let's spread it out, put shooters around Jalen Brunson on the perimeter, let him orchestrate, let him be the maestro, figure it out, get his shots in the paint, in and around the paint, inside the arc, beyond the arc, run that pick and roll. But then if it's not there, he has not one option, not two options. He has a bevy of options on the perimeter to try to dish it out to. That's what it looks like the Knicks are trying to do. Because OG Anunoby isn't really known as, give me the ball, I'm an iso ball player. He's good on the offensive side, but I wouldn't say isolation basketball is the strength of OG Anunoby. Mikal Bridges can fill it up from the perimeter. Dante DiVincenzo set a franchise record last year for three-pointers made. He can fill it up. And so you're adding these pieces where it's like, oh, they want Brunson to invite the defender to dance, do his thing, run that pick and roll, get him one-on-one, maybe get a big going downhill, stop, your hesitation stuff, throw up a floater, throw up a stop and pop jumper in the paint, outside the paint, that 15 to 20-foot area, or take it all the way to the rack. But if that's not there, you kick it out. And the Knicks are now constructed in a way where they have so many, or a lot of, I should say, of those options. And so you circle back to Julius Randle. Randle is a bruiser. Julius Randle is a guy who, when he gets the ball, the offense slows down. It's way more ISO-oriented, but also in a manner where any rhythm at times can come to a halt. Julius Randle is not a get the ball, quick move, it's not there, I'm going to keep popping the rock. He is, I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to slow it down. That's where his strengths are at. I'm going to do my thing and invite the isolation. See if I can draw more eyeballs and then figure out what my next move is. Oh, they're going to bring the double. Boom, you're open. Going to bring the double. I'm going to try to wiggle out of it, still get my shot up, things of that nature. And again, as the Knicks are currently constructed, Randle's strengths can bring into question whether or not it's a seamless fit for the Knicks. Now, again, there's a lot of people who would sign up for all-star caliber, all-pro caliber forward like Julius Randle. I'm merely pointing out how Leon Rose is building this thing and the rest of the front office. Would you rather have a forward or a guy who starts at the 4 who can pick and pop? Julius Randle can shoot the 3, but it's not his number one going away top strength when he is on the offensive side. He's a bruiser. You get him the ball, back away from the basket, he'll face up the defender in the mid-post and do what he does best. But if the plan is to surround Brunson with shooters and to clear out the paint, that's where I think Randle's fit can come into question with some legitimacy. Now, I know there's some Knicks fans who just can't stand Randle. They don't like the sloppy passes, the turnovers. Yeah, sometimes he's had a little bit of an attitude. I'm strictly talking about the on-court part of it with the fit within this offense. And there was a report last week, SNY Ian Begley, who said, there's some in the front office, I'm paraphrasing slightly, not taking out of context, though, there's some in the front office who are questioning the fit of Julius Randle with this team. And I think that's legit, just based off how this thing's breaking down. It is spread this thing out. We don't want a congested paint for Jalen Brunson. We don't want more forward centers, more of the trees. We don't want them collapsing around Brunson. We want him to have as much open space to operate, and then we trust him to make the right decision. As I said, he is the maestro. And so I think that brings into question Randle's fit. Now, I will say, in Julius Randle's defense, you have to look at some of the numbers last year when he was on the floor with Brunson. It backs up the question of whether or not he's a fit and brings it more to a yes, and here's why. Jalen Brunson last year with Julius Randle, Brunson was 43% from three-point range in games he played with Julius Randle. Without Julius Randle, Brunson was 37% from three. Now, is all of that Julius Randle? Of course not. But One thing Randall does very well when he gets the ball is draw attention and draw eyeballs of the defense. Oftentimes, it leads to a double team. If you go back and watch those games when Julius Randle was healthy before he got hurt against Miami in the winter, Jalen Brunson was getting a lot of clean looks from three. And it might have been via a straight assist or a hockey assist from Julius Randle. Maybe he passes it to the open guy, defender switches over there, and then it leaves Brunson open splash. Brunson had more clean looks when Randle was in the lineup. Now, you lose a piece like Randle, that makes sense because he did draw a lot of attention of the defense. And where that point gets backed up is last year. Again, try to digest these numbers. I'm not trying to, engulf you in them or overwhelm you with the numbers. I'm trying to keep it as simplistic as I can. Jalen Brunson last year with Julius Randle, 3-pointers in which Brunson had 6 feet of space or more, which is categorized as wide open. 12% of his 3-pointers came with 6 feet or more of space, again, categorized as wide open on NBA.com, with Randle on the court. Without Randle, that same category, 3-pointers with 6 feet or more of space, dropped to 6%. 6% of his threes came in that category where you're considered wide open. I think that number, or those two numbers, do have a direct tie-in with the impact that Julius Randle has on Jalen Brunson getting some clean looks from three. Again, Jalen Brunson, he likes to he'll get down in the mud with you. He'll grind out possessions. His whole package on offense isn't based around, I need to be shooting wide open threes. In fact, he's at his best when he's driving, manipulating, facilitating, getting around the paint, and starting to do his hesitation moves, his pump fakes, getting the defense off balance, putting up his floaters, his teardrops, his step backs, things of that nature. But there's no doubting that Jalen Brunson had way more wide open clean looks from three when Julius Randle was on the floor compared to post-injury when Randle was out for the end of the season. So who knows? One route I can't see being taken by this front office is having Randle play out this year and then just get a massive offer from another team in free agency next summer and then walking for nothing. And when I say for nothing, I mean the Knicks have to figure out what the plan is with Julius Randle. Is he here for the long term? I think the worst possible conclusion here is they let this contract play out and then he walks in free agency and you don't get anything in return. You would think either lock him up, give him that extension, give him the money he desires if it makes sense from the Knicks' perspective. And if it does, you say, awesome, perfect, sign on the dotted line. If not, and you think you can get a better piece or a piece that fits better and it makes sense for you, go that route. I can't see them letting this whole season play out. Maybe you get to the All-Star break trade deadline and then something pops up, whether it's an extension, trade, who knows. I can't see this front office letting it play out to the point where we go through this whole season, Randle's on the roster, he's playing great, he's playing good, he's playing all right, and then they just let him walk for nothing. That I cannot see. It is Knicks Talk. Mitch I am. Please subscribe, like the video. Other topic point, Tom Thibodeau getting his extension with the Knicks. This was the most obvious move by the Knicks all offseason. We talk about a front office that at times will spur of the moment pop up with a move, and you're like, oh my gosh, no one saw that coming. The Tibbs extension was clearly an order of operations for the Knicks. I'm assuming the front office told him, like, we're going to get you taken care of. You're here for the long haul. We know you're in an extension year coaching-wise, or you're coaching without a new deal in place. We're going to get you taken care of. Let us figure out some of this roster stuff first. 3-year extension for Tom Thibodeau keeps him with the Knicks through the 27-28 season, and this just screams stability. And it screams stability for a franchise that has not had much of that in, you could say, decades, whether it's coaching, whether it's the roster, whether it's point guard play. There were how many starting point guards? It was like a revolving door, a different starting point guard on open night every year for the Knicks for the last 10, 11, 12 years before Brunson came into the fold. You have stability at point guard with your PG1. Now you have stability with your head coach. Tibbs through the 27-28 season. It would make him the longest tenured Knicks head coach since Red Holzman in the 60s and 70s. That's how crazy it's been for the Knicks coaching-wise. And, of course, Holzman was the coach when the Knicks won their 2 titles. You're talking going back to the late 60s, early 70s, mid-70s, and I think trickling into the late 70s too. The last time the Knicks had a head coach in place this long. Tom Thibodeau's bringing stability to the Knicks. They're like, we got our guy. He's the guy we want as the head coach. And I'll admit, when the Knicks hired Tibbs back in 2020, I was very skeptical. The pit stops in Chicago, the pit stop in Minnesota, where he was both head coach and general manager of the Timberwolves, I was skeptical when they hired Tibbs because you heard the same rumors, you heard the same stories, we all heard them. He wears guys out, he overplays them, the message runs dull. Over time, it falls on deaf ears, so on and so forth. These dudes for the Knicks, they want to play for Tibbs. You ever hear Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart on the podcast talk about it? Did you hear OG Anunoby at Summer League last week talking about playing for Tibbs? These dudes love playing for Tom Thibodeau. Just listen to the players. And it's, when they talk about Tom Thibodeau, it sounds like the farthest thing from filler or player speak. You know, you get coach answers sometimes. Both teams tried hard. Better team came out on top. Oh, we need to practice harder, blah, blah, blah. And you hear players speak sometime. I need to be better. You know, I need to do this. I need to do that. When they're talking about Tom Thibodeau, talking about Brunson, Hart, OG, just because I heard OG in Summer League a couple of times being interviewed and I saw sound bites of him talking about Tom Thibodeau, it's genuine. It's genuine from these guys. They rally around Tom Thibodeau. They like playing for Tom Thibodeau. To me, that's all that matters. If the players are buying in, perfect. If some of the fans aren't buying in, as long as the message is still ringing home to the players, I'm cool with it. And I think this fan base, I know I'm one of them. A lot of people have done a 180 on Tibbs, and I'm one of those guys. I wasn't, up in arms, overly upset with the hire of Tom Thibodeau. I was just really, really hesitant to buy in based off some of those narratives. But these guys, they like playing for Tom Thibodeau. And for all those narratives about, he wears guys out, he overplays them. If this team stays healthy this upcoming season, there's so much depth on this team. It'd be hard for any coach to overplay with this roster. Jalen's going to get his minutes. Bridges is going to get his minutes. He's never missed an NBA game. Can he still be that Iron Man? You hope so. OG has injury history. We saw it in the playoffs. We saw it in the regular season. We saw it in Toronto. He's going to get his minutes. Julius Randle's going to get his minutes. I would love to see them have some sort of plan for Mitchell Robinson so that he can hold up throughout the regular season. More importantly, be healthy, ready for the playoffs next year as well. But then the bench, Donte DiVincenzo was a starter for most of last year. Josh Hart was a starter for most of last year. Those two are coming off the bench now. Deuce McBride, who started some playoff games because of injuries, going to be coming off the bench. Right now, Jericho Sims is the backup. Center to Mitch, maybe you bring back Precious Achiuwa on a deal. You have Tyler Kolek, the rookie, out of Marquette. You have Campaign. We're looking at, I think, at least a 9-man rotation, right? At least you got Brunson, Bridges, OG, Julius, and Rob. Those are your 5 starters. And then off the bench, I'll even say pick one between Campaign and Kolek is 6, Deuce McBride 7, Devo's 8, Hart's 9, and then you have to have someone play backup center minutes. So even if you take Campaign and Kolek out of it and you just go Deuce, Devo, Hart, and Jericho Sims right now, that's 9. So those narratives about Tibbs, it'd be hard for any coach to overplay with this roster because there's so much depth if they stay healthy. And they have a couple injury-prone guys. You know who they are. But if they stay healthy, this is such a good roster. And so to me, Tom Thibodeau is a perfect fit for this group. This isn't a super team that's filled with egos and filled with players who want to do it their way in a sense of entitlement. It's a group that will grind out wins. We saw it last year especially. It's not always going to be pretty, but this team will grind out wins. They sort of take on Tibbs' personality on the floor. This is a Tom Thibodeau team with a Tom Thibodeau blueprint. And he's got his guys and he's got a lot of depth. So tip of the cap to him for getting his extension. That'll do it for this rendition of Knicks Talk. Again, please click subscribe, like the video. Appreciate it as always. We'll see you next time.